And I said, someone's going to end up dead. Someone can die. 10 to 13 boxers die per year. It is not a game. Now, of course, the man wants to make money and he wants to box people and he wants to entertain his fans.
Past that, like, it's no big deal, but I'm looking further into this because that's no easy surgery, and I'm starting to ask the question, is this the beginning of the end of Jake Paul's boxing career?
Is this the end of the Jake Paul era? Did watching him get beat that badly ruin future fights, or is this exactly what was supposed to happen and there will still be interest if Jake Paul fights a random 45-year-old that never boxed in his life?
After Jake Paul's knockout loss to Anthony Joshua, many boxing professionals reacted strongly, with some even saying Jake should be banned from fighting for life. Michael Bisping, in particular, was clearly angry as he spoke about how Jake keeps ending up in dangerous fights. He criticized the pattern of either fighting much older, retired fighters or stepping in against opponents who are far bigger and more experienced. Bisping made it clear that combat sports are serious and should not be treated as simple entertainment. He warned that if this continues, it could cause permanent and serious damage, and from his professional point of view, this cycle needs to stop now before the consequences become much worse.
Boxer, if you're a mixed martial artist, right, you have to take this seriously and you have to respect the game. That's why when he fought Anthony Joshua, I scoffed at it. I talked a little bit of because of the lunacy. And I said, someone's going to end up dead. Someone can die. 10 to 13 boxers die per year. It is not a game. Now, of course, the man wants to make money and he wants to box people and he wants to entertain his fans and thrill audiences. And that's great. And God bless him. Fair play to him. The man is very, very successful. I've never talked about that. I've only talked about a 58-year-old Mike Tyson or fighting retired, semi-retired UFC legends and then talking about them, right? All I've ever said is box someone your own age and size. And then this thing with Anthony Joshua, I was like, this is crazy. Now let's talk about the actual fight for a second. It happened in the 6th round and it happened in a 22-foot ring. A typical ring is 20 foot. This one was 22 foot because he wanted a bigger room to operate, a bigger space, a bigger ring, somewhere to run away and be on his bike and stay away from Anthony Joshua. Now, I don't blame the guy. I'd have done the same thing, right? Because Anthony Joshua is gigantic and has the kind of power that could potentially do that to you, right? Maybe it's real, maybe it's AI, right? Either way, his face is going to be swollen today. That's a fact, right? The bigger ring gives you more space. Jake Paul did about 5 miles of road work, shot about 25 double leg takedowns because he didn't want to stand there and go toe to toe with him like Francis Ngannou did because he knows what would have happened, okay? And ultimately, it ended up happening anyway in the 6th round. And yeah, okay, he's going to have the street cred of standing there and say, I went 6 rounds with Joshua. He didn't go 6 rounds with Anthony Joshua. He ran around, he avoided the fight, and then ultimately got clipped, okay? They made 92 million.
Watt explains that Jake had to have surgery because of serious damage to his mouth, and once an injury is bad enough to need surgery, it is never truly the same again. While surgery can fix the immediate issue, it also leaves the area more vulnerable in the long run. In boxing, this risk is even higher because the face and mouth are frequent targets. Wade warns that continuing to fight after such a procedure is far more dangerous than most people realize. A clean punch to the same spot could cause severe damage, especially while the injury is still healing. He also points out that screws were placed in Jake's jaw, meaning the structure has been changed and weakened under heavy impact. According to Wade, this situation is no longer about bravery or toughness, but about protecting long-term health and avoiding permanent damage by returning to the ring too soon.
Better that, if I would have done this, that, it doesn't matter. No ifs in the fight game. The ring is the chamber of truth for a reason, and the reason that Jake lost isn't because he didn't go to altitude. It's not because he wasn't 230 instead of 220. It was because AJ is levels above him as a boxer and as a actual heavyweight, size, frame, reach, strength, all of it. And at the end of the day, he's just better. And that's it. And that's okay. Jake did, I think, as well as you could have asked him to do.
But I had him wobbled at one point.
You landed some...
I had him wobbled, and I was like, fuck, but he kept his hands up better this fight.
You landed that right hand.
Yeah.
And
yeah, Jake did not have him wobbled. I know the right hand he's talking about, and I maybe we can even find it. This is the shot that they're referring to that Jake landed on AJ. Might have been that shot, right? That was the shot that Jake said he wobbled AJ with. Now, he hit him with some right hands. Here's one of them. Right hand over the top. He kind of landed it with an open fist because Jake gets very wide when he steps off with a jab to the body. But he brings a lot of power behind that punch, so much so his feet come off the ground, which usually leaves him in a bad spot defensively. But if you land it, it doesn't really matter. He lands this right hand. It's a big right hand.
Chris Algieri and Paulie Malignaggi analyzed Jake Paul's performance from a professional boxer's perspective. They argue that Jake doesn't have the skills needed to move effectively in the ring. Paulie explains that when facing a much stronger opponent in a large ring, a novice has only two real choices: go all out and fight or run to survive. Jake, however, stayed in between, unable to fully commit because of his limited experience. Chris adds that if Jake had fought properly, he might have been knocked down early, but he would have earned respect from fans in the boxing community. Instead, by avoiding real engagement, Jake loses credibility, and only his loyal followers defend him. Both analysts conclude that without true commitment in the ring, Jake cannot gain legitimacy as a fighter, and his performances fail to earn respect from professional boxers.
Even insult to him, it's just lack of experience. But when you're that much of a novice, you either know how to run for your life or fight all out. You don't have that in between yet. You haven't developed enough of that in between boxing acumen to really pull that off. And so what ends up happening? You're either gonna fight your ass off and you'll last a minute. Chris, you're being generous. Round 2, he would have got knocked down round 1 if he would have fought. But at least he would have fought. He would have gotten the respect of the people and more importantly, the boxing community instead of these clowns that follow him and are still defending him. Now what happens is you didn't get any respect as a fighter. You didn't get any respect as a fighter because you didn't try to fight at all. If he would have, I was watching that through 2-3 rounds. I'm thinking to myself, this guy would do this for 8 rounds if he can. If he can do this for 8 rounds, absolutely not fight at all, absolutely not engage a single time in 8 rounds, he will actually do this. And he'll do it shamelessly. And that's the problem. That's the problem. The shamelessness of his approach to the fight. You're gonna be a fighter, then don't make an ass out of the whole sport, out of the whole business, and out of yourself first and foremost. Because in the end, what happens? You got his jaw broke anyway. So what ends up happening? What's the worst that's gonna happen? You're gonna get hurt, you're gonna get knocked out? You got hurt and you got knocked out anyway. But you just prolonged the inevitable and you got no respect out of it now. Because nobody's respecting that kind of performance. Nobody's respecting a performance where you would totally content to steal money from everyone by running for your life for 8 rounds. And if you could have not engaged a single time in 8 rounds, that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to pull that off shamelessly.
So, Champ, the reason I was saying could go into the second round is because we're overshadowed by how bad Jake Paul looked, that Joshua didn't look good either. He didn't throw a lot of punches early on. He completely avoided the jab for the first 4 rounds. He was just out there.
How you gonna throw punches? You can't get in range. You gotta get in range to throw punches.
Well, he found it. Once he stopped trying to knock Jake's head off with every single punch, the fight was essentially over. But he's out there. It looked like he was rolling out his elbow, which he did have surgery on. He's out there literally doing this at times. He wasn't trying to land the jab. If he went out there and started jabbing, it would have been a different thing, but he didn't. It took him 4 rounds. It almost looked like he literally was like putting oil on the rusty joint to break the rust off by the time he got there in the 4th round. That's the only reason I said he would last the first or second round. Joshua didn't look that great either. His feet looked slow. He looked like he was getting off of an injury, being out of the ring for a while. Looked like he find his confidence, he find his jab. Anthony Joshua has a phenomenal jab. He's got one of the better jabs in heavyweight and the current heavyweight crop. He's got a good jab. He's very active. Throws it.
Angelo and Josh reviewed Jake Paul's recent fight and questioned whether this could mark the start of the end for him and influencer boxing in general. They noted that his fights are becoming less interesting because they often feel like mismatches instead of real competitions. This latest bout, they argued, was far more dangerous than anything Jake had faced before, putting him at serious risk rather than providing entertainment. Angelo and Josh emphasized that the fight revealed the limits of influencer boxing. When opponents are bigger, stronger, and more experienced, the spectacle turns into a safety concern. They warned that continuing on this path could hurt not only Jake's career, but also the credibility of influencer boxing as a whole.
He knew that Jake Paul was going to get exhausted. Look, I've sparred with some of the best guys in the world. Robert Gross Guerrero. He's fought Floyd Mayweather. He's fought a lot of top guys in those lighter weight classes. Bottom line is, he would use me. Even in fight shape, I was ready to fight. And he would use me for his 4 to 5 rounds of warm-up. That's how, they know how to put the pressure. They don't even have to throw punches. Jake Paul was exhausted after round 2. Going into round 3, you saw him diving for the legs.
He was shooting takes at, it was embarrassing for him.
Yeah. He looked like Dylan Dennis. I mean, he looked like Dildo Dennis. He was out there trying to get the legs. I mean, bottom line is, when I was watching this all come about, I said, this is exactly how Anthony Joshua needed to fight. Never left himself out of position. Sure, he still got hit every once in a while. He got hit with the beautiful overhand right by Jake Paul.
It did
nothing. It did absolutely nothing. And so when I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself, he's fighting a great fight. Like he's slightly leaving himself here out of position, but look, he could take everything that Jake Paul had, and he was marching him down. Jake Paul was exhausted. You cannot run. Look, Corey Sandhagen said it when he fought Merab. I can't run around that much, or not Merab, Umar. I can't run around that much and try to avoid the takedowns because I'll get so tired. That's exactly what happened in this fight. Whereas Jake Paul was moving on his bike so much. By round 2, he was exhausted. They even made a bigger ring. They made sure it was the biggest ring they could possibly make and have out there. I think it was 24. It was 24, maybe even bigger.
Oh, I didn't know that. It was literally in a... Wait, so what's a normal size ring for a heavyweight fight?
Like a 22. I think a 20 or 22, and he had like, I think a 24. It was, I'll have to look up the exact numbers, but it was the biggest ring you could actually have.
Eddie Hearn talked about the constant criticism in boxing, explaining that fighters often face scrutiny no matter what happens. He said Jake Paul is at best a decent cruiserweight, and this was clear when he fought Anthony Joshua. Hearn pointed out that Jake doesn't have the size, strength, or experience to fully handle AJ's power, which was expected given the big difference in weight and professional experience. Despite this, he gave Jake credit for what he achieved, noting that surviving and competing against a former world champion as a smaller fighter is impressive. Hearn emphasized that evaluation should match Jake's real abilities, not unrealistic expectations, and highlighted that his performance showed resilience, courage, and potential to grow, even though he's still far from the level of elite professionals.
Also said, as soon as he lands clean, the fight's over, right? He landed a few before, but the first that he landed really clean was the final shot. But, you know, he never flatlined Jake. I mean, he did break his jaw in 2 places, which is a disaster, but there are a lot of heavyweights that would have been out cold from that right hand. I mean, one of them was Francis Ngannou in a pretty similar shot, really. Do you know what I mean? So I actually give Jake unbelievable credit for doing it in the first place, but his performance as well. I mean, I stand by the fact that I think he's just a decent cruiserweight, but like, he did go in with Anthony Joshua, and look, the world is full of criticism and opinions and negativity. Who else is doing what he's doing at what is he, late 20s? I mean, quite phenomenal. I mean, the guy's a complete madman. I'm watching him come out to that ring walk, and he's just an incredible entertainer. And I'm sort of standing in the ring going, is he for real? And he did all right. I mean, I know people will talk about the holding, but his job was to survive, and he survived for nearly 6 complete rounds.
By the way,
he's remarkable.
You just referred to him as a decent cruiserweight, so I'm wondering, has he officially graduated? We all remember that face-to-face many moons ago. I was in the middle. You called him an average fighter, right?
Yeah,
he was very
definitely
offended.
Graduated.
Okay.
Yeah, I did say it before in the build-up to that fight. I said I used to think he was an average fighter. Now I just think he's a decent cruiserweight. In my opinion, nowhere near world class. But how many are? I mean, you know, he's obviously got a really decent chin. Maybe not anymore, but he did have a decent chin because the shots that he stood up to and the final shot, like he was conscious.
Jardy shared his thoughts on the fight, saying he predicted the outcome even before it began, which kept him calm. He explained that in the early rounds, Jake Paul moved around a lot, trying to use his speed to his advantage. But as the fight went on, it became clear that Anthony Joshua's fitness, stamina, and overall skill were far superior, while smaller fighters often rely on speed, technique, or conditioning to make up for size differences. AJ had all of these and could maintain constant pressure longer than Jake. Jordy noted that different people will spin the story differently. Jake's promoter blamed size, but the skill gap was obvious once the fight started. Still, Jake managed to land some meaningful punches and might have even won a round. Jordy added that if Jake had stood and traded punches in the first round, he likely would have been knocked out immediately. Running helped him survive longer, but it also drained his energy, showing just how far the skill and experience gap was against a seasoned champion like Joshua.
Jay, he knew what was going to happen before the fight even took place. That's why he was so calm. And that's probably why in the first few rounds when Jake Paul's buzzing around like a fucking little bee, this is going to slow down. I'm going to get to you. And I said beforehand, the fitness, you know, AJ is going to be fitter than you, you know, because normally when you're the smaller guy, you might have technique or speed or fitness. AJ is going to have it all. And once Jake stopped running, it was obvious. Like, AJ was actually fitter than him as well because he could keep that pressure up for longer. And it's funny because depending who people like after this, the narrative is going to be completely different. For example, Jake Paul's promoter said it wasn't a skill thing, it was a size thing. And it's like, well, no, like once Jake Paul actually was forced to fight, the skills were worlds apart. But he did well to land a couple of punches. Like, I'm not going to take that away from him, and I think he should be fucking, you know, proud of that he did land on AJ. He might have even won a round. That's something he could fucking take to the fucking grave. But let's not kid ourselves. If Jake Paul had have stood in front of Anthony Joshua from the first round and took it to him, he would have got knocked out in the first round. But maybe he would have had more of a chance of actually hurting AJ then. Because, like, the gas tank's getting drained, right, when you're running all over the shop. And your energy of your punches is also getting drained in the process. If you stand there early doors and you're full of energy, your punches are going to be harder, but it's being willing to take that level of risk. And I think on some level, Jake morally for himself just wanted to get beyond the first few rounds just to say, I did that, no matter how he got there. And a lot of people are going to discredit it, and maybe rightly so. I'm not sure if AJ will feel great watching the fight back because there was so much pressure on him to get Jake out there early. But this was always a lose-lose unless he knocked him out in 30 seconds. And with the strategy Jake came with, Jake knew it was a lose-lose. He was thinking that joint right up. And it's funny because his coaches were on about like your footwork. And I'm like, this ain't footwork though, is it? Like, footwork is in and out footwork movement and, you know, outboxing someone. He wasn't outboxing him. He occasionally would tag him and then get running again. But like, that's not boxing footwork in the traditional sense. And I think any fighter of that level would have looked terrible in there against Jake Paul. Like, when someone's doing what he's doing, you're gonna look like shit. It completely changes the whole point of you being in there with each other. You're supposed
Joey Knight described the intense action inside the ring during Jake Paul's fight with Anthony Joshua. He noted that Jake was clearly hurt at times, but still dangerous, landing punches that frustrated Joshua. At one point, Joshua, a former two-time heavyweight champion, even landed some illegal punches in the back during a clinch out of frustration. Despite the danger, Jake kept throwing sharp jabs and rights, occasionally landing clean shots that boosted his confidence. Knight explained that while Jake's punches gave him hope, Joshua's resilience showed he could take the hits without serious effect. By the 5th round, Jake landed a right hand on the inside that seemed to hurt AJ a key moment in the fight. Joey emphasized that Jake's effort in that moment showed courage, determination, and skill, even against an opponent with far more experience and strength.
Yeah, left hooks round the side, catches Anthony Joshua with a clean left hook. AJ's fucking fuming because Jake Paul's hit him. Jake's fucking buzzing because he's hit AJ. Oh, it was chaos. It was chaos. And what made it even more chaos is at the end of the round, Anthony Joshua, former two-time heavyweight world champion, in there with a YouTuber everyone's claiming, and Anthony Joshua is so fucking frustrated at Jake Paul being able to evade him, being able to land those shots on him. He ends up hitting Jake Paul with about 4 punches in the back while he's in a clinch. He knows he shouldn't do it. He knows that it's naughty. He doesn't give a fuck. He's giving him the punches regardless. Round 5. Jake once again throws the jab, comes low, comes over the top with the right hand. It does land on Anthony Joshua. Now, I don't know how to feel about it because I feel like the punches that Jake was landing was definitely giving him confidence at the same time as giving him confidence. I know full well that there comes a moment of realization when you're in a fight and you realize that you're probably not going to knock your opponent out. They've got a decent chin, they can handle your power, and then you start to go, right, okay, let's make this job easier, let's outbox them. But if you're in there with someone that you can't outbox, Jake Paul's not a better boxer than Anthony Joshua, that becomes difficult, and that can become a little bit disheartening when you're landing good shots that you potentially thought would get you out of trouble or at least buy you a bit of respite, and they're not doing that. They're not having the desired effect. So as much as I praise Jake Paul, at the same time, Anthony Joshua didn't take anything that he couldn't take in there tonight. And a minute into the 5th, right, Jake throws the right hand low on the inside. He feels like he's hurt AJ. I think that this was the turning moment in the fight because for the first time, Jake commits more than just 1 or 2 shots.
That's it for today's video. Stay tuned for the next one.